Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Training Well Done, your podcast on the what, the why, and the how of quality training. I'm your co host, Coach Donald,
Coach Tim.
and we are here right after the Christmas holiday leading into the new year. And boy, it has been quite a month because I didn't work a whole lot this month. How you feeling, Coach?
I'm feeling great. How are you feeling after your trip?
I am. I'm like rested. I'm like ready to get back in the saddle. Kind of a long day today, but tomorrow hopefully won't be. But trying to like get back into the swing of things. For everybody listening, I went on a 1 week cruise, but it was like a 2 week. It was a week and a half vacation that led into Christmas and Christmas Eve. So then it basically ended up being like a 2 week vacation. So it was fantastic. It was my first time on a cruise boat, and wow, that was such a fun time.
I was gonna ask you about that because I knew it was your first cruise experience. What were some of your highlights? Or would you do it again?
I was definitely going to do it again.
Okay.
I might have gotten the bug. I need to see if it's going to wear off at all. But I came back like looking at, oh, I could take my nephew on a cruise, and like, how much does it cost to just go on a cruise like a weekend? And I realized, okay, we got to get it together because you can't just go on cruises. But now I want to make everything that's big on a cruise. So
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah. Um, what were your favorite parts? I feel like they're really nice because if you have a lot of different people involved, there's something for everybody to do.
Yeah, I went on Princess. I was looking for something that wasn't crazy. I heard Carnival is a wild time between either the straight up parties that are on there
Mm-hmm.
or all the kids from the families that can take them, and kind of similar with Royal. And I didn't really want that. So Princess had, I would say, there were a bunch of 30 something and 40 something year old couples and 50 something year old couples. Not a lot of 20 somethings, or not a lot of people that obviously look like they're in their 20s, I should say. And there were a lot of 50 something year olds, a lot of people over 50. And there were a fair amount of families, but not too many. So it was a pretty mature crowd.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that because it wasn't too crazy. There was lots of jazz music and like chill reggae and stuff like that. Highlights. Well, one, I got engaged. So
That's a pretty major highlight.
yeah,
Congrats.
thank you. So I got engaged on the second night of the cruise, so that was really fun. And then the other big highlights was just going to all the different islands. We flew to Puerto Rico,
Okay.
so we got to already be in the Caribbean, which saved us a lot of sea time. Because most of the other cruises that leave
Makes
out of
sense.
Miami, you have a day at sea to start, sometimes 2 days at sea. You go in a week long cruise. If I'm looking at the itineraries, you might go to three, maybe four locations if you're lucky, sometimes even two locations. And then you have like 1 or 2 days at sea on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
This one, we went to 6 places. We had one day at sea. We went to St. Thomas. We went to St. Martin. We went to Antigua. We went to Dominica. And we went to Barbados. Okay, we had five
Oh,
locations
that's
we went to.
excellent. That's a
And
good
then we had
lineup.
one day at sea on the way back.
Yeah, that's a really good lineup. Um, did you have a favorite out of all of those, or maybe like what was the favorite thing that you did off the boat?
All right, so this ranks in different ways. I'm going to give you a different answer. The most memorable part of the trip was going to Dominica because it was horrible and so well redeemed and so memorable. Dominica is basically the Amazon in a small 100 square foot island, or
Okay,
I don't know if it's 100 square feet, but it's like
like
a
100
hundred
acre.
100 miles
Yeah.
across.
Oh, got it. Got it.
I don't really know. I
I
don't know the square root of 100.
Yeah, I don't know
Off the top of my
much
head.
about it either.
But it's a small island that's no bigger than like the Pittsburgh metro area, basically. And that island, we had all these lists of things to go see because we knew this was gonna be the adventure place. It's all rainy. It's a big rainforest, and so we went to go to this volcano. Well, the GPS took us on a road that doesn't exist anymore because the road got blocked off from landslides. This place has a lot of landslides,
Okay.
and this road hasn't even been real for at least a couple of years. And so I was on this. We're up on this ridge, like high. We're like over 1,000 feet plus up, like because we've been just driving up for half an hour, and it's pouring
Oh,
down,
this is the
raining.
video that you sent
Yeah, this is
me.
the video that was
Okay.
on
Okay.
Instagram and I sent, and it's pouring down, raining, and it's a single track, mind you. there's parts of this road where it was basically wet ground and mud, and
Uh-huh.
they put these cement slabs on to mark where your left and right tires should go,
Yep.
and you had to perfectly drive on those. Then there were these massive 6 inch or like even 1 foot, not maybe not 1 foot, but 6 inch potholes just all everywhere. And then it was a single track, so we got stuck in mud. When we got to the end, we had to turn around, so I had to back into this spot where the guys told me to back in, but then I got stuck in the mud. Leslie's completely tripping because she swears we're going to go. There's cliffs on both sides. So there's a front cliff that we can visibly see skylight tops of trees. Then there's another cliff behind us where it's very densely wooded, but you can see from the house down the street, it's definitely a drop down.
Okay.
And where I was pulling out of, the tires were basically hanging on the back part of the down part, and the front tires were almost on the front of the cliff. So she's just, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go down this cliff. We're gonna go down this cliff. I'm like, we're gonna be fine. Matter of fact, I'm like laughing, like I'm just giggling. I'm having a good old time. I'm like, I'm either gonna die or I'm gonna have a wonderful story to tell out of this. And so, or I mean, I guess there's a bad option, which is I'm severely paralyzed and still live. But she gets, I make her get out of the car. Like, just get out of the car. Just pour it down and get out of the car. And so I could drive more aggressively, trying to get out of the parking spot without worrying about her, like being in the car. Mind you, this is British style driving. So it's my second time, the day before was the first time, driving on the right side of the car, trying to pull out of the spot. Eventually we get out, but we got stuck like 2 or 3 more times just to go down the hill. All right, it's Nickstadt. We go to this waterfall. We have to go off-road again. Long journey to get there. We don't get stuck though. But then it's torrential downpour, so you have to cross this river to get to the other waterfall. It's a 40-minute hike, no big deal. But the river was up like 8 inches or so. And we were like, we don't want to walk in the water. We're not dressed in rain, wet gear to walk in the river to walk 40 minutes. Who knows what else is going to happen in this 40 minutes?
40 minutes, yeah.
Versus like if this was at the end of the 40 minutes, oh, we're at the end of the hike, we'll just do it anyways.
No problem.
But who knows what else we have to do. So we walked out and we saw these people like twice our age come out of there as we were driving off. Just like, yeah, it was great. It was so worth it. But they had like hiking sticks and like wet gear. I was in like regular sweatpants and running shoes and didn't plan to be in a rainforest because I didn't know that.
Wet, right?
Mm-hmm. So we go to this other place called Freshwater Lake. It looks like the Loch Ness Monster's lair. The visibility was like 50 meters, 100 meters, cloudy. It's at the top of this other crazy hill, but the roads were really good on that hill.
Okay.
Danger signs when you go in. Danger sign by the water. Do not get in this water, and do not go past these buoys if you do, because you will not make it back because the current is just whoosh. And it's this UNESCO site. There wasn't a soul within easily 5 miles. Not a soul. And so we're up there, and you just hear this in the wind. And Leslie's like creeped out. Her hat blows off in this other video. And it's just like, this is kind of eerie. The bathroom was pristine because nobody goes there. And I was like, this is the best bathroom I've seen off island, off boat on this whole thing. But then Leslie's creeped out, and I'm like teasing her, like I'm like yelling in the clouds, like there's some spirit there. And then we get in the car, and then the sun comes out, and then the birds start chirping against it. Yeah, it's time to go.
Of course, when you're on your way back, right? Then you get the nice weather.
So we're over it. Like, this has been bad. It's like 1 o'clock now. It's almost 1 o'clock, and this has been going really downhill. That was the last place on the list that I thought we were going to make. I wanted to go to this place called the Valley of Desolation, but it was too far away, and who knows what it was going to take to get there. We're like, we're going to just take this car back. But she's like, you know what? There's this gorge we should go see. So we go to this place called T2 Gorge, and I end up speaking to this lady because I'm like, I see this other trail that goes into a river, and I'm tired of trails that go into rivers that I can't walk through. And she's like, no, the gorge is actually up this way. You could drive up there, but like it's like not even a 5-minute walk. I was like, okay, we're gonna go check it out. You should plan to go swim. It's raining currently. I don't really plan to swim. She's like, no, you kind of have to swim to go see it. All right, whatever. So we put swim clothes on, and then we see this young guy. Shout out to Marshy. His name is Deshaun. But he's like one of these super talented dudes. He comes down. I'll explain this in a second. I'm gonna try to get to the story. He comes down. He's like, I'll be your guide taking you through the whole swimming thing. $20 a person. Okay. We go up there. He's like, because it's raining really bad, you have to wear a life jacket, and we're gonna actually tube you. Sometimes we let people go just in the life jackets, but because it's raining so hard, the current's too fast and you might get swept over the cliff.
Okay.
So you have to go in the tube. Okay. We get up there, and so like it's this rainforest with active volcanoes. So like there's also random parts where the water's really hot. There's this pipe coming out where the water is just like very warm, almost hot, just falling into it. But we're in this like puddle. It's kind of like one of those pools that like kind of the water goes off the ledge, and you kind of like, let's say you're on a
Oh, like
skyscraper,
in an
an
infinity
infinity
pool.
pool.
Yeah.
It's like an infinity pool. You look over this cliff, and it's like, oh, that's a cliff. But we don't fall over because the current's really weak right there. So you could die, but like the current's not moving very much right there, so you can just paddle away. He hooks us with his feet. I hook into her with her like inflatable with my feet. He hooks into hers with his feet. And this man swims us against the current into the gorge. It was like 30 meters. He swims us back into it. And then he dumps us out of our tubes and we have to swim across in our life jackets to get to the entryway of the actual gorge room. And apparently this was in the Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Cave or something. This was like
Okay.
this place was actually shot in that movie where they shot some sort of scene. I don't remember the movie. And we had to walk in there, and this super powerful current, and it was just this like euphoric experience standing in this waterfall. The scale of the waterfall would be if you were like the size of a fly in like a full on bathtub water. So like it was kind of about this. It was probably proportional to the amount of force and like the size. Like it wasn't huge. It was just big enough just small enough you could stand in there.
Yeah.
But like I could barely hold myself up. I actually kind of had to hold on to him to hold myself up because I wasn't used to it. And it just made the whole experience amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
And we were just not expecting it to be that great. So Dominica stands out the most because of that.
It's interesting that you finished with that particular story because not too long ago I went down into this rabbit hole with the research that they're doing about being in awe of things and like how what that does for our brains, right? To have these quite literally like mind-blowing experiences, right? Like for me it was the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. I like walked up to the edge, just like holy, it just like, blows your mind when you're in these experiences like you just described. You're like, wow, right? And it's so healthy, and we need it as humans, every few years to have an experience that just makes you go
Yeah.
that's neat. I'm glad you had a good time. Well deserved.
So now as we move into our episode today, we're talking about running economy, speed and muscle recruitment. I know we love to start with our coaching moments and just thinking about running economy. One of my college athletes came in right before I left on the cruise and right when I came back, Nye, and she came in like, I just want to work on my starts, these hurdles. It's like, okay, cool. So we work on like ideally I was just working on power. Like gotta put more force into the ground. She's got all this to say about how her starts aren't being focused on or whatever.
Okay.
And while I'm recording them, I decide I'm gonna record from the front. We always record things from the side. I'm gonna record from the front. And I see this crazy thing where her foot, when she took her second step out of the block, would hook behind the other leg. So like her foot would hook, it would externally rotate. So her foot was like on the other half of her body, and then internally rotate and whip back out, and then come in front and step down. And I was like, what in the world is that? That is crazy. And our other leg didn't do it. And so we ended up like working on this, but we had to find this balance of not overly fixating on this. And like I like to pull out the whole bag of problem solving to find some new drills to like work on this. And then, she spent some time with one of our other coaches from our high school. She was an old high school kid of mine. So she worked with one of the other high school coaches to work on some of this. And so she came back this week, and we were able to like take a look at this and like get this squared away so it wasn't so problematic. And so that was my little coaching moment of like being able to reduce the internal rotation that was happening, especially the external rotation at the beginning, so that her foot didn't hook around. She started a little bit of the internal rotation on the front, so that still has to get worked on. But her foot was able to get back on the ground a lot faster on her second and fourth steps out of the blocks. And so on her timing gates, she was able to drop a meaningful amount of portion in her 10-meter sprint out because of being able to fix that little thing.
That's a huge win. I mean, and to do so this is how you know you have the coaching experience that you do, to be able to address that without like overcompensating or overcorrecting, right? To like be able to get meaningful gains without trying to like completely rewrite what the athlete's doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really neat. I had a fun moment with the trackside distance kids while you were gone. Um, it was the last session last Monday, and I don't know, for some reason everybody just seemed a little let's say lethargic with the drills and the plyometrics, and my mind went back to having this conversation, or to having the conversation with you on this podcast about, you know, the cultivating the right environment to get the results that you want, and why we do certain things, and you know, in the way that we do them, and how it's all, you know, designed. And they just kind of we took like just a little bit of a timeout, and this was more for the newer athletes who aren't quite so well versed with some of the stuff yet, or at least not as proficient as some of the kids. And we had this nice little like, hey, listen, guys, here's what we're here to do. Here's how we're going to get there. Here's why this is a part of it. And then when we went back to doing the drills and the plyometrics, I had some of our more advanced and experienced athletes. Like, I was like, hey, what's your favorite one to do and why? And can you show us how this is done correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, and then have the younger athletes follow. So all that to say was I really felt like, and this is going to go into the subject material that we're talking about today, obviously, but it was just really neat to see them get dialed in. And then when we started the session, like everybody executed really, really well. They were either hyper consistent with their splits, they were able to either run faster or add volume because they felt good. In some cases, like with some of the guys, they did both. So it was just a really cool session to see how that flow worked, but how we can you know, curate the environment and the dynamic, the interpersonal dynamic, you know, among the athletes. So that was a neat experience for me.
So did you say you asked them what's your favorite plyo and why? For some, that's really cool. I never
Yeah.
thought to do that.
And
It's like a way to like get them to also demo it and explain it.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. It was neat. It
Yeah,
was
I
really
like that.
cool.
Writing that down in my little
Yeah.
toolbox. So you want to talk about some of these common myths? We're talking about running economy. You want to kind of explain what running economy is and talk through some of these myths before we get into our deep dive?
Yeah. So I think the best way to maybe kick things off here, Coach, is I can see. I want to make sure that we are establishing like a common language, not between us, but like with us and the listener. And throughout the episode, we're going to be using the terms economy and efficiency pretty interchangeably, right? So I just want to call that out from the start. It's like, if you hear us talk about economy, we're talking about running efficiency, and if you hear us talking about running efficiency, we're talking about running economy. Okay, so just to establish the baseline for that. But that being said, we always start with addressing, you know, some common myths that people might think of when it comes to the topic that we're going to be discussing. The first myth that we wanted to chat through here today is the assumption that running efficiency or running economy is only important for distance runners, right? Or long distance athletes. And another call out before I get too far, we're probably going to use a lot of running examples, but all of this is also going to apply, you know, multidiscipline. So myth number one, running economy only applies for long distance runners or long distance athletes. We can see why that is, right? Like over the course of a marathon, we talked about this last time, you're taking X amount of steps over Y distance. So you're trying to maximize each of those. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to sort of touch on what we touched on in a previous episode, with the same applying to sprinters as well, right? So in the example you just used with the internal and external rotation and how that shaves, how addressing that can shave off a significant amount of time, um, in the course of a sprint, I think that's a perfect example of how running efficiency or running economy translates to somebody like a sprinter or even a field sport athlete.
Oh yeah, being able to have good running economy, and we think about what is good running economy. It's going to be having good optimal force and mechanics to be able to not waste energy while you're running. So how does your foot hit the ground? How does your legs cycle? How are your arms moving? People talk about good form, like this is that, and so being able to help with, not having unnecessary hip rotation, inside or out, and being able to do that is really important. Whether you're going to hurdle, you're in a long jump, you're sprinting 100. If you have to sprint a 400, you're only going to take a few hundred steps in that race. They need to be clean because you have to deliver a lot of force through the ground. And if your form is bad and you're applying force the wrong way and your economy's bad, you can get hurt. And at worst, you're going to get hurt. And at
Yeah.
best, you're going to run slower.
Yeah. So when we're talking about this stuff on this episode, just keep in mind that it does apply to every athlete, not just distance runners or not just runners, specifically, but everyone can benefit from having better movement quality, which I think is just another way to say economy. Myth number 2 is that better economy means taking shorter steps or having a higher cadence. Um, that can be a part of it, as it relates to distance running, of course. That can be a part of it, and I've found that in my experience, um, correcting for an overstride is probably one of the single best things that you can do right off the bat for a distance runner. But that's not the only thing. That's not where it stops. We work on again in the distance world thing, the arm swing, like you mentioned. We focus on vertical oscillation a lot too, right? As a marathoner, you want to move horizontally, not so much vertically, so we don't need a lot of bounce. But the idea is that taking shorter steps or having a higher cadence can make you a more economical and efficient runner, but that's not the only thing. That's not the only thing there is to it, right?
Oh yeah, being able to actually, where are you landing on your foot? Should you be heel striking? Some people, they don't need to do that, and so if you're able to bounce, you're gonna get more force out of there. It makes me think. Although I see why the myth is there because there's a lot of people that need to be corrected on
Of
overstriding,
course, absolutely.
and if you're listening, you might not even know that this is a myth to the extent that like it actually has a lot of truth. Um, if you are listening to this and you are a distance runner, you or somebody you may know might be an overstrider. How can you tell an overstrider? First of all, you take really big steps and you're not necessarily very long limbed or strong. You are taking big steps while also running on your heels. Because if you're stepping too far away from your body, you can't land on the ball of your foot. You must land on your heels. Even at high speeds, you have to land on your heels.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
And then there's an active braking force
yes,
then
there's active
as a
braking.
result.
If anybody's ever told you your running looks heavy, you're probably overstriding. And so being able to, for a lot of people, tighten up those strides is going to really help out. But there are also a lot of people who they run with these little teeny tiny strides. And it's like you need to actually press your hips through the ground so that you can actually get all the force out of there because there's only so quick you can make your stride before you're actually just not going anywhere. And you're just kind of like one of those cartoons where you're just spinning in place.
Your wheels, yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good visual analogy too. I'm gonna use that. Um, so to kind of wrap up that section on the myth busting is like there there obviously is a certain degree of truth about taking shorter steps or a higher cadence, but it's so multifactorial that the myth in that regard is that that's the only thing you need to focus on. The another thing that I think we should define or frame before moving forward, and I should have done this at the top, but um, if we're using efficiency and economy interchangeably, what we mean by that is that your movement quality is better, and because you have better movement quality, there's less of a metabolic cost to that movement. So you can think about this. You might have a good analogy in for like a sprinter or a field sport athlete, but as a distance coach, I've always thought about this as like your miles per gallon, right?
Mm.
It's like how far can you go on the least amount of energy, and like where is that intersection over the course of whatever distance your race might be.
Oh, I like that a lot. That makes me think about our next episode actually a little bit about the VVO2 max. But no, I really like that analogy about miles per gallon. What's the way you would say that in running terms?
I guess it would depend on who I'm talking to and what I think would resonate, but
It's like distance per
you
stride.
yeah,
No.
you're trying you're trying to get from let's for this example, let's just take performance out of the equation, right? um you're trying to get from point A to point B using the least amount of resources possible. That might be a bad example because we are going to get into some of the more performance based,
Well,
pieces of this,
yeah, I
but
think that actually VVO2 max would be the equivalent of miles per gallon. Like I'm trying to think of something that would be better than that. Because it's the velocity of like your VO2
correct.
max, which you can use
Yes.
different percentages of that,
Correct. Yep.
which I mean, I feel like is a parallel to miles per gallon.
No, you're right. Once you said that out loud, that's probably the best equivalent.
Well, you gotta hear about that now next
Yeah,
episode because that's
we'll
the
see.
next time.
We'll table that for later.
So let's deep dive. Let's get into what actually makes running more efficient. So can you tell us, Coach, about this whole interplay between how the nervous system and muscles interplay with that running economy? I know we talked about a little bit of that before. So if you want to kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, we have excuse me. We did touch on that. I forget which episode.
I feel like it might have
It
been on the
was
the
now.
single leg strength one, but I know we talked a little bit about it on base building too.
Yeah, so several. So I can't point anybody back to a specific episode if they need to, or if they're interested in learning more about that. Um, just listen to all the episodes, or better yet, watch. That's why we have video, right?
Probably was on a single leg power training episode 5, people.
Yeah. So basically the everything that happens has a nervous system component to it, right? It's not just muscular contractions, and the more efficiently that you can move, or in our example, run, the smoother that neuromuscular component is going to be. And what that looks like is your ability to fire the right muscles or muscle groups at the right time, fire them with as much force or power as you need for your task, right? That's going to be different for if you're doing 400 versus a marathon, and as a result of that, you're not going to be carrying a lot of extra tension in your body, which will make everything feel and look from a third party perspective, objectively, let's say, quote unquote, smoother or more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a term I come back to a lot, is fluid.
So when you look at that, how does that play with maybe some of the fuel efficiency that goes on, going back to our miles per gallon, when you see, oh, somebody's economy's growing and so they're able to use their energy better. Like, what does that look like when it comes to also improving that metabolic efficiency?
Yeah. So your, I am gonna mangle this analogy. So you might have to jump in here, Coach. Um, what what is the analogy you use about like the sports car? Like, there's no use having a high performance sports car if your tires are
Oh, these little
trash
crap
or
tires.
something like that. Yeah, right. So like we've discussed before, there's going to be a metabolic cost to everything, and that is quite literally energy, right? So if you are expending more energy than you need to, you're not optimizing. And when we talk about efficiency and economy and all of these things that we can do to improve that, basically what we're doing is pushing that needle more towards the optimization piece so that all of the energy that you're expending at any given point in time is getting you, I don't want to say one step closer because that's a terrible joke, but it's it's pushing you in the right direction, right? And like, to go back to what I said about vertical oscillation, right? If a distance runner has too much up and down bounce, that's going to hurt their ultimate goals because, guess what? The finish line is in front of you, not up over your head. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So when we look at, in part, the other part that I'm thinking about is as you improve their economy, and that's getting your muscles to work when they're supposed to and not work when they're not supposed to. And so you
Ah,
mentioned like the
yeah.
vertical oscillation. So
Yeah.
they're not bouncing up and down. So that's extra energy they don't have to use, which is then going to be able to keep more fuel in the system so that then the fuel that, like, if you're inefficient, you're just using up a lot more carbs, using up a lot more fat, using up all the ATP because you got this weird bounce thing and your arms are doing this. Shout out to I'm not gonna say your name here, but I made you use those batons during all those 200s the other day because your arms are acting crazy. Stop that.
Don't let your arms go crazy.
All right. When your arms are swinging and doing all this, it's gonna, like, even when your arms are just they're too wide, your stride actually has to be on the ground longer
Mm-hmm.
because, well, your foot can't get off the ground so your arm's done swinging. So if your arm's still swinging, your foot's not gonna get off the ground. They're gonna stay on the ground, which can put you in a compromised position or just make you run slower. And it's something I've talked to this kid about. But then I was watching one of my former athletes who's in college, and I was watching him run and this other guy in college, and I was like, and it just like was clicking in my head about how intentionally they're swinging their arms and yet how little they're swinging their arms because it's just so clean and neat. And I try to like mimic that, but I know when
Uh-huh.
I get tired, it's hard to do that. And I was watching this kid and I'm watching her run, and I'm like, well, we have all these other issues we do need to be addressing. We need to clean that up because you could actually take this as a note for you today when you go to the track right after we get done recording this. Is for I have the batons in my car. I can give them to you. Um, for this particular child to use them
Okay.
because she has all this swing, and for all the other issues that she has going on, I think this is something that can help take pressure off of the other actual injured part. Anyways, so being
Great,
able to
great call out.
have that economy, you're also gonna be able to save yourself a lot of energy. Which, if you're running like a marathon, like, you need all the energy you can get from not
Right.
wasting any extra movement. Or if you're running a mile as hard as you can, well, lap three is pretty tough, and lap three gets even tougher if you're doing any old thing with your arms and
I was
legs.
gonna say, if your arms are going crazy, right? No, I really enjoy watching you coach the sprinters with the batons and um talking about arm swing because when we talk about this efficiency and economy, I think a lot of people just think, oh well, it's what happens at the from the waist down, and that's not the case. Um, for you, maybe the with this particular athlete, the arms are too wide. With a lot of my distance people, I see them swinging across the midline, almost like they're like in a boxing match.
Just to clarify, this was a distance runner.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I have
If it,
those. I have the
I'm
trackside kids at distance use the batons all the time.
I think I know who it might be, and we'll definitely get into that tonight. Okay, so at the end of the day, right? Why does efficiency and economy matter? It's like we said, it's all just a push towards optimizing every stride that you take, right? Because the more control you have and the more fluid, there we go, back to fluid again, the less energy you use. And if you have better control and you're using less energy, you're ultimately exerting less effort. So you'll get better outcomes with the least amount of work, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So let's chat a bit about what you feel when you feel your running economy improve. Like, what are some of the things that you'll notice?
So I'd hate to keep using the term fluid, but um,
Can you break down what fluid
yeah.
feels
So
like?
so so fluid to me is the relationship between your ground contact time and your force output. There's that directional component, right?
Stride length
But
versus stride frequency,
yeah,
people.
there you go. Um, it's like the two commandments of running. Stride. We don't need 10. Two will be enough. Um, but yeah, it's when you're putting your foot into the when you're hitting the ground and you're contacting the ground, you're putting force into the ground that then will help move you forward, right? So being fluid to me is that sensation of, okay, I'm at that sweet spot of the amount of time that I'm spending on the ground and what I'm getting out of that time on the ground in terms of like forward propulsion, right?
Mm.
So when you watch these elite athletes, you know, your front pack at some of these big marathons. I mean, these guys, for all intents and purposes, they're practically just flying because they're spending minimal amount of time on the ground, but they're getting enough out of that they can open up their stride length to take more strides. So they're spending more time in the air than they are on the ground over the course of their 26 miles.
It was something great I was reading this morning. I get these email articles from Altus out in Arizona, and one of the things that I got, this was relation to sprinters. Talking about at a higher level of sprinting with elite runners, they spend more time in the air than on the ground. When I think about going through
Right.
Ralph Mann's even biomechanical book, the air time sometimes it starts to drift higher than the ground contact time because they're so good at getting off the ground that they can spend their time in the air. Now, you obviously don't want to be in the air too long because then you're just jumping. But there is this magical sweet
There's a
spot
sweet
of
spot.
being in the air off your stride longer than you're on the ground to get back into the air.
Right. Right. I'm glad you mentioned that there can be diminishing returns, right? Because
Oh, yeah,
you can't
yeah.
be in the air so long that you're just like, I mean, you're not bounding the
Yeah.
entire race, right? Um,
So let's chat about, talk us through what's happening when you're sprinting, when you're jumping. You're talking about change of direction here because economy also matters for jumping, for cutting, and things like that. And even when it comes to just outright running, these different phases, how your body moves. You want to talk to us about how the economy influences even those activities and what it means for economy when your foot hits the ground.
yeah. So I guess to go back to the basics, I want to revisit what we were just chatting about in terms of an overstride. And I think this is, I don't want to get up on a soapbox here, but uh, okay, so this might be my version of your lactic acid complaint, right?
Okay. Tell me
So
more.
heel striking, heel striking. Heel striking's the enemy, right? A heel strike is a symptom of an overstride, right? Because you mentioned this earlier. If you're reaching out and taking these big, long steps, you can't land on the midfoot or the ball of your foot, right? So the heel striking bit is kind of demonizing the wrong thing, right?
Mm.
When you're able to correct for an overstride, then you implicitly correct, for the heel strike. So just to provide some context there, heel strike symptom of an overstride, but in this particular example, I'm going to talk about the heel strike specifically. Okay? When we reach out and we're landing on the ground in front of our hips, we're contacting the ground with the heel of the foot, creating an active braking force. So at the same time that you're trying to move your body forward through space, you're fighting against yourself by creating this braking force, right?
Mm.
So you're telling your body to move in one direction, but you're actively putting it in a position where it's trying to like stop that movement from happening. When you're in that position, you're in a compromised state, right? Because when you hit the ground hits back. There are ground reaction forces that your body needs to handle or absorb. Okay, um, this I don't want to jump too far ahead, but um, the ground reaction force is something that we can use to our advantage if you are efficient and economical. It is not great to be in a position where your body's compromised and unable to deal with that reaction force. That's why a lot of people get hurt, right? That's
Mm.
why the heel striking becomes the enemy, is because people get hurt because they heel strike, thinking that it's not taking it all the way back. Anyway, I digress. You're also then turning the the running movement or the gait into more of a pulling motion than it needs
Mm.
to be, right? Because it's really tough to engage your glutes and push off with your quads without the ball of your foot on the ground. So what happens is then people end up dragging themselves like through the entire gait cycle and activating, like your hamstrings are supposed to stabilize you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not move you forward. So if you think about sitting on like an office chair or any chair that has wheels on it, and putting both legs out in front of you, putting your heels into the ground, and then like pulling the chair
Yes.
towards your
Yes.
feet, like any person with any bit of common sense is going to be like, well, that's not how you run. But that's what happens when you overstride. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a dramatic example,
Pulling the
but
seat in.
everybody's done that. So, that's where we're at. So, basically, what's happening is that without really good quality movement, you're not able to absorb, the ground reaction force as well, much less use them to propel you, into the next stride. And you're also not in a good position to stabilize the body for either the next push off or just to help absorb those reaction forces. So um, when we use the example episode 5, episode 6, these are all getting jumbled together in my brain now, but you use the example of like the basketball player cutting and jumping for the layup, and how the concentric and eccentric and isometric forces were all happening in a very
Mm-hmm.
short period of time. That's what's happening, with each gait cycle. Okay, right? Hitting the ground, you're absorbing the force, you're stabilizing for the next push off. And so that's why the efficiency and economy is so important. Um, because if you do this poorly, at worst, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And at best, you're not getting maximum return on the energy expended in that gait cycle.
Yeah.
That was a very long winded response. I apologize to you and the listener.
No, you're all good. So we think about, you mentioned about the foot hitting the ground. In the gym, we often talk about doing isometric work, eccentric work, concentric work. So we think about these three phases of movement, right? Whether you're cutting, like you mentioned, or when you're like trying to get through the stride. If you're heel striking, you have this kind of really long. You have this almost weird eccentric portion because you have to hit the ground and like absorb hitting the ground, but then you are also like pulling yourself into
Uh-huh.
position, which is still like an eccentric motion to have then, this isometric, which whether you're overstriding or not, is that kind of stabilizing part where your foot stops moving.
Yeah.
And then you're being able to apply that force back into the ground for that concentric part. And something I hadn't really thought about until you said that is how that kind of pulling the chair in motion is like this really long eccentric part that can be really, really stressful to the hamstring and even the calf muscles and things like that. So, being able to, again, talking about that whole ground contact part, airtime, if you're able to, when it, let's say jumping or you're cutting, when your foot hits the ground for a jump, if you're able to get off the ground faster, you're going to have a better jump. If you're able to absorb hitting the ground really well from a jump without like feeling like your body needs to break
Mm.
as in like, oh, you feel really stiff hitting the ground or like your knees hurt, but you're able to actually just go down and come right back out of it, you're gonna have really good repeat jump performance. Let's say you're playing volleyball or something like that. So let's talk about, how we improve running economy,
Yes.
which generally revolves around speed and running at different up tempo paces, whether it's sprinting, whether it's just doing faster miles, these different there's intervals, there's repeat sprints. There's a whole lot of metabolic reasons to do faster running, but there's technical reasons to do faster running. And so, can you share about like why we run fast to improve economy and what do you get out of running fast?
Yeah, so I think it's important before we dive into that, just to briefly um, put a disclaimer uh, on what we mean when we're talking about this, and that's like I I caution people, like, say we identify an athlete who does um, overstride, right? The cues that we're going to give them are probably, hey, just take shorter steps more frequently. Let's start at the top. Um, but we're not going to actively try and change. We're not going to say, hey, these are the, things 1, 2, and 3 that you need to do to quote unquote fix your stride, right? Because then by doing that, the athlete's probably going to stress other areas in other ways and try and move their body in a way that the body has not been accustomed
Mm-hmm.
to, right? So there's concern there with trying to say, oh no, you're doing it this way and I need you to do it this way, right? When it comes to the thing itself, the in this case running. So what we do is we kind of get in under the hood and condition. I want to choose my words carefully here. We want to condition or train the body to move in a more economical fashion, which will then translate or have direct transference to their activity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why, to use your example with the batons, right? We do a lot of the drill work, the skill based stuff, you know, guys, this is why we jump around in the gym so much. I still have not read that article. I keep meaning to. You forwarded me one before you left for vacation
I
about
forward you
jumping.
a lot of articles.
Oh, I just it's there. It's flagged. It's in my inbox. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
So let's talk
But
about.
anyway, so yeah, so what we're trying to do is not we're trying to correct the thing itself, in a lot of cases improve the thing itself
Mm.
by giving the body the different stimulus that it needs in order to create the um, the metabolic efficiency and the neuromuscular adaptations needed in order to optimize your efficiency. So the skills, the drills, the jumping, the up tempo running, in a lot of cases, the sprinting, hills. We love hills because that incorporates, all of it. Um, but basically, with the higher intensity stuff, you're putting, and you can expound on this more if you want, Coach, of course. But I think the easiest way to put it for our audience or our population is like you're putting the body in a place where it has to be as efficient and as economical as possible, um, so that it it knows what it feels like and it sort of figures it out on its own, right? Like when you're doing the hill sprints, it's darn near impossible to overstride on a hill sprint,
Mm.
right? Um, so just getting the reps in with something like that, getting the reps in with the higher turnover work, right? The faster you're running, the better your stride's going to look. And depending on your level of fitness, you may be able to get, a few good reps in, or a long interval session,
Yeah.
which is better. But basically, we're just manipulating the environment so that way your body's moving the way it was designed to move, and then that will ultimately, with practice, translate over into some of those like lower intensity efforts. So all of a sudden, you feel a lot smoother and a lot more fluid on your 20-mile long run because you've been doing the up tempo stuff in a way that's not just from a cardiovascular fitness standpoint.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So some of the things that I want to think about also, nervous system wise, is when we're thinking about also running fast. You mentioned the metabolic part, but also neuromuscularly, being able to recruit these muscles really well. So we talked about that, a couple points ago, where when you're running fast, especially when you start sprinting, even for long distance runners, that forces you to have to recruit a lot of muscles at any given time, because as you put a lot of force through the ground and you're trying to go fast, you need more muscles, motor units to work at the same time. So that teaches your body in the sense of changing gears of how do I activate more muscles as well. And if you had that, you kind of notice that when you're running sometimes is, oh, like I'm using more. AKA you sometimes are more sore if you're not doing that. Also, something that I think you mentioned earlier, when you're running fast, you have a lot less time to, especially even overstriding to an extent, because you can hurt yourself really bad if you're overdoing it. But you don't have enough time to go through a really bad gait cycle. You can still go through a bad gait cycle. Do not get it twisted. That's why people get hurt sprinting all the time. But there are certain issues that you might have that become more pronounced to have to fix when you're running fast. So let's say you have too slow of a cadence when you're running. And, if you have a slow cadence when you're running, you probably default to being a longer distance runner. But when you're being forced to run repeat 800s or repeat 400s or something like that, well, if you have a time to hit, you have to get your legs to turn over faster. But if you have this long push off on your stride and then your heel hits the ground 8 inches away from your body, then if you're going to hit the time, you have to now put your foot on the ground a little quicker, which is going to put it more underneath your center of gravity. Oh, you have to pick your foot up off the ground a little quicker too. And so if you're doing that speed work with that intent, then that's going to also allow you to just ease off some of the extra tension that's going through there, so that you can clean that up, especially when you're doing that intentfully. And the other thing that's good to note when it comes to running in like running speed, bouncing. I love talking about
Yeah.
bouncing. It's my favorite thing. If I had like an emoji as a running coach, it would be a bounce house. I don't think a bounce house is an emoji, but if any of you work for Apple, and I think there are some people that work for Apple that listen to this podcast, make them make an emoji that's a bounce house. Um, in another world, maybe I'll be Coach Bounce House.
Is there like a
That
spring or a coil or something? I don't even think there's that.
I don't think so. Coach Bounce House. That sounds like you could be a really fun, like we have bounce house business, or like something that's like music, like bounce music. Bounce music. Anyways, um, so being able to have better
Bounce
elastic
house.
energy. So how do your tendons be able to spring and bounce? That you can then translate into your longer runs.
So that I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I think that is sort of one of the final destinations to where we're leading with this conversation is the when we're talking about um, optimization. Obviously, we need to talk about all that free energy that you
Hmm.
get through this elastic energy or the better quality movement and more powerful movement you can gain through the free elastic energy and how we get the most bang for our buck with that and how we can train it because it is a trainable quality.
Oh yeah. And so we think about it being a trainable quality. I want to think about for our distance runners listening to this and our power athletes running like listening to this. How do you actually improve running economy? We spent the last 50 some odd minutes talking about running economy, but how do you actually improve it? For a lot of our long distance runners, it's running fast with intention. I tell my runners when you're doing these repeats, yes, you need the metabolic part, but you need to think about something in your form that you're going to fixate on and work on. So you need to think about what's my bounce like through this stride? How high is my foot stepping over? And is it appropriate for the speed I'm going at? Am I being able to get my heel up to my butt? How's my arm swing? First of all, am I crossing my body? Because hopefully you're not. And then like how much movement is my arm making, and is it enough? Often for some of the younger runners, is
Yeah.
it enough? And for some of the older runners, how can I lessen this so I can have a quicker arm turnover? And will that help make my legs move faster? That's something you have to experiment with. And so being able to run even 100-meter sprints, 200-meter sprints, anything under like half a mile is a really good way to work on that. But also, if you're running 2 miles and you're running 1 mile fast, you can do that. For our sprinters, I would say on the other end, there's a lot that could be gained in running economy. Yes, in running at over 90% of your top speed or running at full speed. But when it comes to some of that, you can't think when you're running that fast. And so actually being able to get some slower tempo runs where you're running 100s, 200s, 300s, I wouldn't go 400s at the most, really, for a lot of athletes. Where if you're working on your form, it's much easier to do this with shorter reps where you're not dealing with a lot of fatigue.
Fatigue. Yeah.
So I love 100 to 200 meters for a lot of these repeats where actually you're slowing down, you're running fast enough that you're sprinting, but you aren't sprinting at a super high velocity that you can't pay attention to what's going on.
Uh
So
huh.
then you can think about your bounce, you can think about your arms, all the same thing as I just mentioned with the distance runners. You have more repetitions to think about that. If I do a practice where we're doing flies, we might only run 6 flies, maybe seven. That's pushing it. We might do ins and outs. We might run 3 flies that are build ups, and then we might run three of these in and outs, and then we're kind of done. Um, Whereas if you're actually running a lot of these tempo runs, you might get to run 10 100s, 8 200s, which for a lot of sprinters like, oh, that's a lot of running. But that's a lot of time to practice getting your body in the right position for you to run. You could even do starts that are like 70%. You don't have to, your only day of doing starts doesn't have to be 100% push outs. You can do them at lower intensity so that you can really focus on getting a lot of reps in. And those are ways that you can kind of really improve that running economy as part of the work that you're doing to it also coincides with improving your metabolic fitness at the same time, especially if you don't go too high in the intensity until you really know what you're doing.
After hearing you say that, Coach, I'm thinking if maybe our third myth bust at the top of the show should have been the fact that your high intensity efforts when it comes to training for this stuff, they don't always need to be like high intensity. A higher intensity, like you just mentioned, 70% starts, is like still incredibly effective.
Mm-hmm. So that's our, session on running economy and some things for you to think about when you're out running and training on how do you improve your running economy. It's not just pushing harder. It's not just about using your energy better, but it's this um, kind of combination of how running faster, how running cleaner with good form can help with allowing you to use your energy better. And so that you're able to actually improve your efficiency so that you don't have to just rely on sure brute force and lots of miles and lots of speed to get faster. No, you can actually improve how fast you're running by running better and more cleanly, which will allow you to actually run more in the long run and not be hurt.
Yeah, and work smarter, not harder, right? Um, One recommendation that I do make to all of my athletes in order to sort of practice this, maybe on your own time during your own session, not a coached workout, is um, at least once a week. Do me a favor, leave your headphones at home. Um, I find that people oftentimes, if they're not absorbed in a podcast, or they're not letting themselves get caught up in their pump up music, that they're just a lot more aware of what's happening when they're out there, right? And so I mentioned on a previous episode, to me, like running running is like a dance, and it's the same movement, but it's never quite the same movement, but we're always trying to get that perfect movement, right? And that's hard to do if your brain's distracted and your brain's elsewhere. I'm not saying there's not a time and place for a long form podcast or an hour long podcast on running efficiency and economy during a workout. um, but every so often, just kind of give yourself the opportunity to have the focus of the run being, the internal monologue that goes along with how am I optimizing each stride? Like, where's my foot landing? Where am I pushing off from? How did this stride feel as opposed to the next?
Mm.
Whoa, like what made this one better? What made this one feel a little bit weird? And just by eliminating distractions, you can learn a lot about how your body moves.
Yeah, I love that. I really do think about those things when I'm running. I did a track workout not yesterday, 2 days ago. It was my first track workout in a while.
You
Me,
personally?
me, me
Okay.
ran. Yeah, I went up to CMU and I did one of the workouts in like the beginning of the winter trackside training. And I didn't run that. I did run that workout with headphones, but the first time I did, I didn't. And I like to think about it. I ran a bunch of 200s, and I was like, all right, like how is my foot hitting the ground? And they weren't so fast and so many that I was like fried. So like even when I got tired, I could really lock in on that. So it's great stuff. If you listener are looking to support the podcast though, you can get our webinar on strength training and plyometrics, which guess what? Will help you with your running economy. If you click the link below or you go on our website, www.ghperformance.com, and if you're like really into the whole keyboard thing, /webinar, you can get the webinar. It's $10. It helps support the show. And it's a full-on 1 hour webinar to show you how to lift weights, how to do plyometrics, how to organize all this stuff to help you with your running economy. Um, we'd love to get your feedback on the show. So if you follow us on Instagram at Training Well Done, we're also at Coach Dim and Coach Donald over at Global Human Performance. You can leave us feedback, or when you see us in the gym, if you're a member, about the episodes and about what you'd like to hear next. Coming down the pipeline, we're going to be talking about VO2 max and velocity at VO2 max. And so aerobic power in our series that we're in on episode 2 right now of talking about running fitness and aerobic performance. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
See ya.
I don't know if our guy over there. Hey, we just finished that episode. It was about 104.12. I need to get some water. My voice is hoarse. Eventually he's gonna see this. I should just had the stop button. I wonder if one of these keyboard buttons work. Yeah, I feel pretty confident if I click something, I'm gonna like
That'd be terrible.
podcast. That would be horrible. So I'm just wait till that guy comes in. Um, thoughts, feedback.
Thanks. Um, I thought it was fun. I thought we didn't. I know we didn't hit everything that was on the notes, which is totally fine because I think that we still were pretty comprehensive. Gives a better idea of how to approach these notes for this next one as well. I think we did a good job not going down too many tangents. I might have a little bit. Um, and I'd be curious to see what people think about sort of taking a minute and defining like terms and like actually say like what do we mean when we say this?
Yeah.
What did you think?
Thought it was well. I think I would like to avoid me going on an 8 minute tangent to start the show. I think it might have been entertaining enough that enough people will let it slide. I gotta watch that, so I want to get to the episode sooner. But
I
to
agree.
explain all that. It was kind of fun.
I agree, though, but people are curious,
Yeah.
and
Those are listeners who
it's
know me. So.
yeah. It's eight. The way that I see it is it's 8 minutes on the first episode of the recording instead of like 4 minutes on the first episode of 4 minutes on the second.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Get right to it.
Yeah.
I think on some of those where I'm passing you the ball to answer the question, I would prefer if you went to answering the question. There was that one part about the running economy about I think it was point C, and you gave this like 2 minute and 50 second thing to go into the question, and then didn't all the way answer the question. So like being a little bit more pointed to that. There were a few points I think on B and C where like you wrote the show notes but you didn't follow your notes. And so I think there was a couple instances where you were using a little bit of filler to add a lot when I think you would have been better suited following your show
just
notes
going by the
and just going
text.
through there.
Yeah.
You didn't need to make it more longer than it was because it was a few times it was kind of hard to follow where you were about to go with it. And if you are going to do that, make sure you land the plane coming back to those notes.
Yeah.
So like those couple times you heard me go back to those and you looked and read it, it was because I was like, because
I never really got to them. Yeah. That makes sense.
Where's our guy at? I'm gonna get some water. I think I have one of their phone numbers. You know what? Those. I gotta just find the phone number that was on the email.
Don't they normally just like jump back in?
Yeah. Normally. Hey Joe, my name is Donald. I'm in the Avenue studio. There was a person on here, but we were trying to get their attention. We finished recording like 6 minutes ago. We needed that one pause so we could get ready to record. We're gonna take a minute to like get ready to record the next one, but there's like the clock never stopped running from the one we finished a little while ago, and so usually there's like a person that like I don't know if they're listening in or whatever, but there's usually a person there, and that person like we were trying to like talk to the computer, but they weren't there, so call the number on the email. Okay. So if you could